Does anyone remember the SpongeBob episode, The Sponge Who Could Fly, that aired in March 2003? It was dubbed The Lost Episode by its commercials based on the episode's storyline, where Patchy the Pirate uses a treasure map to find SpongeBob's episode that he lost, of course. The night before the episode was aired, I was sick with the stomach flu. I was feeling too ill to fall asleep, so I stayed up and watched TV. It got boring with King of the Hill and American Dad, so I decided to turn it on Nick. Around 2:30 a.m., my stomach started to settle. So I planned to turn off the TV and try to fall asleep after about 30 more minutes. But I was reaching for my remote control. The opening for SpongeBob started playing. SpongeBob was my favorite show at that time, so I couldn't miss out on watching it. Although, it was kind of strange that they were showing SpongeBob in the middle of the night. It usually shows at about 6, and then it starts. But I didn't think much of it. When the opening played, I noticed that the contrast of the animation was slightly darker than usual, and the theme song sounded a bit harsh and raspy. This made me feel a bit uncomfortable, especially since the darkness was closing in, but I tried brushing that off. The title read Lost Episode, so I thought and figured that there was a mishap and Nickelodeon was accidentally airing The Sponge Who Could Fly. When the episode started playing, it immediately looked out of the ordinary. It started with SpongeBob sitting on his bed, slouched and looking downward, with a somber look on his face. This was definitely not like himself. SpongeBob was so optimistic at the time. Why would he be acting like this? After about 10 seconds of seeing SpongeBob like this, he let out a big sigh. Then he looked over beside his barrel. The screen zoomed in on a pill bottle that was sitting behind his clock. Once the screen zoomed in close enough to read the text on the bottle, it showed that it was a Prozac bottle. The show then panned to a scene with a much brighter contrast, showing SpongeBob taking one of the pills, then running off smiling and laughing. The fact that SpongeBob had to take pills to be, well, himself, made me feel a little bit uneasy, especially because mental disorders and antidepressants are more mature themes that obviously shouldn't find any place in a kid's cartoon. It should be noted that this was a scene on a show intended for kids. The screen flipped back to the original scene of SpongeBob looking distressed, while at the same time changing the contrast back to the darker one. The screen froze on SpongeBob for a few seconds, then flickered to a new scene. This scene showed SpongeBob at his desk, the same one that he was in the episode Procrastination, in his Prozac bottle, piece of paper, and a pencil. At this scene, instead of staying at one contrast, the colors kept on flickering from light to dark. SpongeBob gripped his pencil in his hand. A tear rolled down in his face. The part that bothered me the most was the tear didn't look like the usual blue cartoon-style tears and characters in SpongeBob usually cry out. This tear looked completely realistic, as if they'd been a drop of water rolling down on my TV from his eye. SpongeBob wiped the tear from his face with a sleeve and began to write on the paper, reading out loud on what he was writing. "I can't take it anymore," he said. As soon as he got that sentence out, a faint noise started playing in the background. It sounded like a child crying. I felt uncomfortable, but I kept watching. It was addicting now. The noise continued playing as SpongeBob continued writing. "My life has been horrible. It hasn't gotten better. My best friend Patrick is my only friend because he doesn't know any better. My neighbor, Squidward, hates my guts. He'd probably be happy if I wasn't around anymore." SpongeBob stopped writing and talking and started weeping loudly. The color flicking started getting faster, and the cries in the background started getting louder. I was scared. I gripped the controller just to make sure. If anything jumped out, I would turn it off immediately. It sounded like more children were beginning to cry. It could have just been my imagination, but I think I heard one of the children faintly yell, "He's gonna do it! He's gonna do it!" The children's cries get louder, and the colors kept flickering faster as SpongeBob keeps writing. The only job I can get is being the fry cook at the Krusty Krab. My boss, Mr. Krabs, refuses to give me an actual paycheck. And he basically uses me to get more customers. I'm in my 20s and I still don't have my driver's license. Sandy. Sandy is the only girl that I've had in my life. Even if she's just a friend. She's never had any interest in me. I'm pretty sure she's only my friend because she feels sorry for me. I'm sorry if I'm hurting anyone at all for doing this, but I can't just live like this anymore. The screen froze for a few seconds. Then it showed with SpongeBob writing his final sentence. The contrast stayed dark instead of flickering from light to dark. And the children stopped crying. It was absolute silence except for SpongeBob saying, "Goodbye." The cries came back. SpongeBob quickly stood up, twisted off the lid of the Prozac bottle, dipped his head back, and let all the pills in the bottle fall into his mouth. And he swallowed them all whole. The screen twitched and the animation was darker, but still visible. SpongeBob clutched his stomach and vomited realistically. Pale orange stomach bile. It was clear that his body was trying to cleanse itself from the overdose, but it was no use. SpongeBob collapsed onto the floor and lied there motionless till the screen turned to static. Needless to say, I was scared out of my mind. I mean, come on, if you saw that, what would you do? And sleep was definitely out of the question. God, I wish I just turned off. Recently, I've been looking this episode all over the internet, but not even one website has it. If you recognize this episode, please let me know. I feel like I'm going crazy here.